Well, today we've got the great GT417 walkie-talkie, which is a 4-watt huge device, about 14 inches tall, in a steel case, 6-channel capability. If I remember rightly, these come fitted with 1 channel, and then you could add extras as required, whereas the Sertel GT417, same unit but badged as Sertel, actually came populated with 6 channels. I think there's another one of these. Yeah, G-Col also did one of these. We were always promised that CTVR were going to do one of these, but I never saw one in reality. They were doing the same model as a 29 meg set and kind of passing them off to what you'd call the illegal market. So, they're made by Great, obviously, and if I remember rightly, it's the receivers let these down, and they've got a useful signal meter, they've got a power meter and a battery meter. They've got high-low power, they've got high mic gain or low mic gain, which in a windy environment can be pretty handy, on-off volume and squelch. And this one has come without a battery holder. These take 8 AA ordinary batteries or 10 AA rechargeable batteries. So we've already bought in a 10 AA battery holder for this particular job. This job's been on hold until that came through, and that now will complete the set. What I ought to have checked before we did any ordering is that that was a toolkit just kind of fell on the floor. Is that this great big telescopic aerial, which goes all the way up to my camera up there, is in one piece, and it is. Right, we'll take the screws out and see what happens. Okay, I'll tell you for nothing that these are enormous pain to set up on the test bench. What I've had to do is to take all the boards out of the printer, all the screws out of the printed circuit board, so I can tilt the board upwards to get a crocodile clip onto the back of the speaker, because it doesn't have an extension speaker socket or an earphone socket. We've got the power going into the DC power connector there, that's fine, and that's at 12 volts, not 13.8. And then all I can do is to put a crocodile clip onto the telescopic aerial, which is far from satisfactory SWR wise, and the nearest possible earth to that, which is that can. Now that is very unsatisfactory, but there's no external aerial socket, and there's no way that you can bypass the loading coil for the telescopic aerial, which is there. So we're going to have to set that up finally on a field strength meter to make sure that it's optimum. What I'm going to do, because it's going to automatically inherently have a high SWR because of this poor arrangements I've had to do, I'm going to set this up on low power, so I'm not putting the transmitter under any duress. So hopefully that's going to be something like 400 milliwatts. Now it's crystal controlled and you can't set the frequency. There's no trimmers for the crystals, either on transmitter or receiver, and this isn't unusual on systems band equipment. So I don't know what we're going to find, but it should be somewhere. By the way, it works on channel 1, which is 2760125. So the single crystal that's in, you've got one for transmit, which is that one, and you've got one for receive, which is that one, minus the single IF of 455 is channel 1. So I'm just going to go into transmit. It's 2760114, so it's still slightly high, so that's fine. So that's pretty good going. Okay, now what we do have is, from the manufacturer's instructions, I've been able to make a chart up from the circuit diagram that I've got. In a handy way, they've got this layout of the radio to tell you where to put the optional crystals, and it's also told you which coil number is which. So I've been able to match that up with the circuit diagram, and that's made this task somewhat easier. Right, so we're going to set off, and the first transmit coil, as far as I can see, is we're going to start off here. I think it says L13. So we'll go into transmit and just make sure we've got optimum on that. Ah, right. That does set the frequency. So that's fantastic. I'm really chuffed about that. But if you've got more than one crystal, of course, you're going to be taking an average. So the first coil there, which looks to be L13, sets the frequency. And I'll just now amend my little layout here and put TX frequency. Good. Ages since I've seen one of these as well. I've got all the juicy ones at the moment. We're going to have a pile of boring ones like York 861s, I've no doubt, next week. So we'll now move on to transmit with that one. Tried to put the wrong tool in it. Quite a bit of a faff because you've got to hold the transmit switch in. And I'm going to have to go on to high power now. I've done all the ones that can be done at low level. Switch the power supply off while I switch the radio to high power. So it's reading about 2 watts on the test set, but that we can't take any notice of what that says because we know that we've got a high SWR because of this arrangement. We never are going to find out what the real power is because of the loading coils. So we know that it's going to be something like the manufacturer says. We know that's half decent power. So the next thing we need to do is we just need to check the deviation is right. Now all I can really do with the deviation is the whistle test. Wallow. And that's just slightly over the top. But it's got this microphone sensitivity control. So I'll just switch that to low and then see what happens. Wallow. Yes, I think, to be honest, it's set right because I can't achieve full deviation in low position. And it's just very slightly over the top in high. The deviation control is SVR3, which is the one just there. You've got the bottom. There's 2 presets there, one to the left, one to the right. It's the one there to the right, SVR3. So that's deviation. The next thing I want to do is to check that the RF meter actually reads something like, and so I'll just kind of tilt the radio around. Yeah, and it's reading something like you'd expect. Now, if we'd have needed to adjust that, the RF meter is in fact the bottom control there, which is SVR4. So that's all there is to it. We're getting the kind of power we'd expect, and what I'll now do is I'll do the next video on the receiver, and then at the end of that I'll go back to the transmitter and we'll just peak it for maximum field strength.